Hi, my name's Jake. I'm 34 years old, and my wife, Emily, is 32. If you had asked me a few months ago, I would have told you we had a great marriage. Not perfect, nobody's is, but solid. Turns out I was blind. And today I'm here to tell you how I found out my wife was sneaking around with my so-called friend, how I turned her own secrets against her, and how, in the end, well, let's just say she got a performance she'll never forget. But first, let's rewind a few weeks so you can experience this mess exactly how I did. I always thought it was harmless. The little inside jokes, the shared glances, the playful nudges between Emily and my friend, Ryan. I mean, isn't that normal? A friend group always has those two people who just click humor-wise, right? At least that's what I told myself. Now, let me paint a picture of Ryan. You know those guys who look like they were handcrafted in a gym, like some ancient Greek statue, but with the personality of a guy who only reads motivational Instagram quotes? That was Ryan. Always tan, always flexing, and somehow always finding a reason to take his shirt off no matter the weather. "It's just so hot in here, man," he'd say. We were in an air-conditioned restaurant. Meanwhile, I'm the kind of guy who enjoys a good meal without counting every calorie. I'm not saying I'm out of shape, but let's just say I've never felt the urge to take a shirtless selfie in the mirror. But Emily and I had been together for years. We had inside jokes, routines, that unspoken understanding that comes with a long relationship. Ryan, he was just a friend. At least I thought he was. Looking back, the signs were glaring. Like the way Emily and Ryan would always have these little whispered conversations when we were out with friends. I'd ask what was so funny, and she'd wave it off. Nothing, just something dumb. Oh, I was the dumb one, all right. Then there was the whole chauffeur situation. Emily doesn't drive much. No big deal. She Ubers, takes the bus, whatever. But somehow, Ryan was always offering her a ride. "Jim? I got it, man. Hair appointment? Hey, I'm heading that way anyway." Was he actually heading that way? Probably not. But at the time, I just figured, hey, he's being a good friend. And then there was the joke. One night, we were all hanging out, and Ryan had just dropped Emily off from the gym. I made some offhand comment like, "You spend more time with my wife than I do." Ryan laughed. Hard. Like way too hard. Emily? She just rolled her eyes and smirked. And that should have been the moment. That should have been the second where my brain connected the dots, where alarm bells went off. But no, I just chuckled and let it go. Because I trusted them. I trusted him. And that, my friends, was my first mistake. I never liked dancing. Never saw the point. You spend an hour awkwardly shifting your weight back and forth, trying to look like you're having fun while secretly hoping the song ends before your legs give out. Emily, though? She loved it. She was one of those people who actually felt the music, who could close her eyes and just move, like she was in some indie movie montage. Me? I look like I'm trying to dodge invisible traffic cones. But she never minded. If we went out, she'd dance with her friends, and I'd hold down the fort at the bar, nodding along like I was totally fine with being a spectator. And I was. Until that night. We were out with friends, usual spot, usual group. The music started pumping, people got up to dance, and I did what I always did. Shook my head and sipped my drink. My knee was acting up from an old work injury, which, for the record, was way cooler in my head than in reality. I stepped wrong getting out of my truck. Emily knew that. She didn't push. First. Then Ryan, Mr. I Sweat Confidence himself, stood up, stretched like he was preparing for the Olympics, and turned to Emily with a grin. "Come on," he said. "One dance." Now, here's the thing. When another man asks your wife to dance, there's only one acceptable response. A laugh, a pat on the back, and a firm nope. Instead, Emily turned to me and asked, "Can I? Can you? Can you?" I looked at her, genuinely stunned. I had always been the guy who didn't get jealous, who prided himself on being laid back, but something about that moment, about her asking me for permission to let another man take her hand, made my stomach twist. I didn't even answer. I just stared at her, and she hesitated. For a second. Then she turned back to Ryan. And he, the absolute legend of arrogance that he was, put a hand on my shoulder like we were old war buddies and said, "Dude, just one dance. I need a worthy partner." And before I could even process that, he led her away. Like I wasn't even there. Like I had already lost. I sat there, gripping my drink, watching my wife move with another man. Watching her laugh, watching her look up at him like he was something special. And then I heard it. The laughter. Not from Emily. Not from Ryan. From our friends. Damn, man. One of them chuckled, nudging my arm. She made her choice. And then, because some people just can't help themselves, another friend patted my stomach. That was the moment. The second everything clicked. They weren't my friends. They were Ryan's. I wasn't part of the group. I was the punchline, and I was about to make sure they never laughed at me again. I wish I could tell you I handled it like a mature adult. That I took a deep breath, counted to 10, and calmly discussed my feelings like one of those emotionally enlightened guys who journal and drink herbal tea. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I stood up, walked straight to the dance floor, and tapped Ryan on the shoulder. He turned around, still grinning, still riding high on whatever main character energy he thought he had. And I asked point blank, "You slept together, didn't you?" The music didn't stop, but in my head, it did. Everything around me blurred, like a scene in a movie right before the big fight breaks out. Ryan had two choices in that moment. He could deny it, laugh it off, call me crazy. That might have worked. But he hesitated. Just for a second. And that second was all I needed. Because hesitation means guilt. He opened his mouth, probably to spit out some dumb line. But he never got the chance. My fist met his face before the words did. Now, I'm not saying I'm a professional fighter, but I did grow up with two older brothers who believed that love was best expressed through well-aimed punches. So when my fist connected with Ryan's overpriced designer glasses, they shattered. So did he. The guy went down like a sack of protein powder. Then everything turned into a blur of bodies and chaos. Apparently, punching one guy at a bar means you now have to fight everyone at the bar. I don't make the rules. Ryan's gym buddies jumped in, thinking they'd play hero. One grabbed my arm. Another went for my shoulder. Bad move. I swung my elbow back and caught the first guy in the ribs. He doubled over. The second one, I sent him straight into a table. Drinks spilled. People screamed. Someone yelled, "Dude, what the?" But by then, I was already throwing my next punch. Another guy lunged at me, wrong decision. I sidestepped and he went face first into a chair. And the whole time, Emily just stood there, hands over her mouth, like she was shocked. Shocked? Shocked? What exactly was shocking here? The fact that I wasn't just going to sit there and let her and Ryan make a fool of me? That I wasn't just going to laugh it off like some sitcom husband who, honeys his way through life? Not tonight. By the time I stopped swinging, half the guys were on the floor, groaning. The other half were smart enough to stay out of it. And then, right on cue sirens, somebody had called 911. Probably the bartender, who was watching his furniture get broken like this was a WWE event. The moment I heard those sirens, my brain finally caught up with my fists. I turned to Emily, grabbed her by the wrist, and dragged her out of there before the cops could show up. The drive home was quiet. Not "we had a small disagreement" quiet. Not even "we're both too tired to talk" quiet. This was something else. Something heavy. The air in that car felt thick, like it was pushing down on us, squeezing out any last shred of normalcy. Emily sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, eyes fixed out the window. Not a single word.
No excuses.
No fake outrage. Nothing. Good. I wanted her to feel that silence. I wanted her to sit in it, let it wrap around her, let her mind run wild with what comes next. I parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, and just sat there.
No rush. No hurry.
Then, without looking at her, I said, "Inside." She hesitated for just a second, just long enough to tell me she was scared of this conversation. Good. We stepped inside. I walked straight to the kitchen, pulled out a chair, and gestured toward it. "Sit." She stood there, frozen. Like maybe, just maybe, if she didn't move, this wouldn't be real. I let out a slow breath. "Emily, sit down." She did. I stayed standing, leaned against the counter. arms crossed, staring. "Tell me everything," I said. Her fingers fidgeted in her lap. "Jake, I don't—" "Everything." The way her whole body deflated told me she knew there was no way out. No way to spin this. And then she started talking. First it was slow, careful, like she was tiptoeing through a minefield, terrified of stepping on something that would make it all explode. It wasn't like that. It just happened once. I never meant for it to go that far. I said nothing, just stared. She took a shaky breath. "It started a few months ago." Of course it did. "I don't know when exactly. It just happened. We talk a lot. You were always so busy. And I guess I held up a hand. Do not make this about me." Her mouth snapped shut. Smart choice. She swallowed. "I didn't think it would be a big deal at first. It was just flirting. Just jokes. Jokes. Like the ones they'd whisper to each other when they thought I wasn't listening." She kept going. "Then, I don't know, one night he offered to drive me home, and we just talked. For hours." I raised an eyebrow. "Talked?" She dropped her gaze. "At first. Of course. Always at first." She shifted in her seat, twisting her hands together. "It wasn't serious. It wasn't like some big affair. It was just a few times. A few times." My jaw tightened. "How many is a few?" She hesitated. "Emily." She took a breath. "5. No, 6. She winced. "Maybe 7. Maybe." So 7 documented betrayals. Who knew how many others? I stayed silent, waiting. And then came the part that almost made me laugh. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I let out a slow breath and shook my head. "Right? You accidentally met up. Accidentally took your clothes off. Accidentally forgot you were married." She flinched. "Good. You thought you were special to him?" I said, voice flat. "Did you? Did you think this was some great romance?" Her face crumbled. "Jake." I stepped closer. "Emily, do you know how many times Ryan has bragged to me about women? About how easy it is to get what he wants. How he just gives them enough attention, enough charm, enough compliments to keep them hooked." I tilted my head. "And you? What were you to him? Some love story? Or just someone who never said no?" Her lip trembled. "That's not." I let out a sharp laugh. "You really think you were different? You think you were the one woman he actually cared about? Emily, Ryan is a collector. He doesn't date. He doesn't commit. He just adds names to a list and moves on." She looked like she was going to cry. I didn't care. I turned away, running a hand over my face, letting out a breath. "We're done." She made a sound, half gasp, half sob. "Jake, please. I'm filing for divorce." Silence. For the first time since we walked into this house, she looked genuinely panicked. "Jake, wait. Please. It didn't mean anything. It was stupid. I was lonely. We can fix this." I almost laughed. Fix this? Fix what? The fact that she risked our entire marriage for Ryan. A guy who thought taking his shirt off in public was a personality trait? She reached for my arm. "Please." I pulled away. And then I left the room. Because the truth was, I wasn't done. Not yet. I barely slept that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Not in the way she probably thought. That kind of sadness burns out fast when it's replaced with something stronger. I was angry, not just at her, not just at Ryan, but at myself. For months I had played the fool. I had sat at dinner with these people, laughed at their jokes, let them put their hands on my shoulder, slap my back, make little jabs about my weight, my job, my life, while behind closed doors I was the joke. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, running through every conversation, every little smirk I had brushed off, every, "Oh, it's just an inside joke" moment. How many times had they mocked me while I smiled along? I turned over, looked at Emily's side of the bed empty. She was on the couch. Good. She deserved to be uncomfortable. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. First things first, I needed proof. If I was going to divorce her, I wanted every piece of evidence lined up like a court case. And that's when I made a discovery I wasn't expecting. I was scrolling through my phone, checking social media, when I got a message from a mutual friend. Someone who, unlike the others, was actually on my side. The message was short.
Hey, man.
I don't know how to tell you this, but you should check out this link. It's about Emily. I frowned, clicked it, and my whole world tilted. There she was, Emily, on a profile she had made. A profile where she was, let's say, sharing herself with the world. For money. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not one of those guys who judges people for what they do with their own time. You want to make money online? Go for it. That's your business. But this was my wife. And it wasn't just pictures. Oh no. She was actively talking to people. Chatting. Sending personalized messages. Spending hours entertaining men who were paying her by the minute. Meanwhile, I was at work, breaking my back to provide for us. I scrolled through the profile, my heart pounding, my stomach twisting, and then I saw him, Ryan, in some of the photos. Not just her in some suggestive poses. Ryan was in them too. This wasn't just a secret hobby. This wasn't just a guilty pleasure. This was a business. And I had been funding it without even knowing. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling my anger morph into something worse, something sharper. I wasn't just going to leave quietly. I was going to make sure she never forgot this. I stared at the screen, rereading the page over and over like maybe, just maybe, if I blinked enough times the words would change. They didn't. There she was, Emily, my wife, selling photos of herself to strangers online. And there he was, Ryan, right beside her. For a moment, I just sat there, absorbing it, processing. And then, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so insane, so far beyond anything I had expected, that my brain short-circuited. Cheating? That's one thing. But setting up a whole business behind my back? Using our marriage as a backdrop while she secretly made who knows how much selling these pictures? And the best part? She wasn't even good at hiding it. Her username? A variation of her actual name. The photos? Some were taken in our bedroom. The captions? Inside jokes we had together. Oh, this wasn't just betrayal. This was stupidity on full display. I scrolled further, curiosity getting the best of me. And that's when I noticed the pricing. Some of these photos were going for hundreds of dollars. Others were part of special collections for premium members. Premium members. I clicked on one of the posts. The comment section was lively, to say the least. A bunch of thirsty guys throwing out compliments, making requests, calling her goddess, or some nonsense like that. And that's when the idea hit me. I was going to buy some, not because I wanted them, not because I was some glutton for punishment, but because I needed leverage. I needed proof. Concrete. Undeniable. Good luck talking your way out of this one. Proof. I made an anonymous account, something generic, nothing that would trace back to me. Picked a username that sounded like any other desperate guy on the internet. Loaded up a prepaid card so my name wasn't attached to anything. And then, I bought my own wife's pictures. With a click of a button I had access to all of it. Every post. Every private message thread. Every exclusive picture she had ever sold. And let me tell you, she was still selling them. Even after our talk. Even after she sat at our kitchen table, crocodile tears in her eyes, begging me to, please forgive her. She was still out here, hustling like it was just another Tuesday. At this point, I wasn't even angry. I was impressed. At the sheer audacity. At the commitment to the bit. At the fact that she had zero idea she was about to be exposed in the most spectacular way possible. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, a slow grin creeping onto my face. Oh, Emily, you wanted an audience? I was about to give you the biggest one of your life. I sat there, staring at my screen, and for the first time in this whole mess, I felt calm. Not the kind of calm where you've made peace with everything and moved on. No, this was the kind of calm you feel when you finally realize you're holding a royal flush at a poker table full of cheaters. Emily had been so careful with her words during her confession. She admitted just enough to make herself look bad, but not enough to burn everything down. She wanted to control the damage. She wanted to walk away looking like someone who just made a mistake. But this was not a mistake. This was organized crime. If the crime was betraying your husband and using his house as a personal photography studio. And now I had proof. Every screenshot, every message, every overpriced, exclusive picture she had ever sold to some lonely guy on the internet, including me. The question wasn't if I was going to ruin her, it was how. And that's when it hit me. Emily's big moment was coming up. Her graduation. She had been talking about it for months, practicing for it, dreaming about it. Because, of course, Emily wasn't just graduating, no. That would be too simple. She had been selected to sing on stage during the ceremony. A solo performance, in front of hundreds of students, parents, professors, and faculty members. She had been gushing about it for weeks. It's going to be such a special moment, she had said. One of the biggest days of my life. Oh, Emily, it really was going to be a big day. Just not in the way you expected. Step 1, getting access. Universities love their fancy presentations. Big projector screens, picture slideshows, live video feeds. And guess who had access to the tech booth at Emily's university? That's right, Ryan. Because apparently Mr. Jim Selfie also did part-time AV work for the school. Probably just another excuse to be around younger women. But hey, I wasn't complaining. Because that meant Emily had trusted him to help set up her slideshow. And Ryan, well, he wasn't exactly careful with his login credentials. Let's just say, if your laptop password is literally your own last name followed by 123, you deserve everything that happens next. A little bit of effort, a little bit of digging, and suddenly I had access to the presentation system. And now, I just had to wait for graduation day. Because the moment Emily stepped onto that stage, microphone in hand, ready to belt out whatever emotional ballad she had picked for the occasion, the projector wasn't going to show a slideshow of her academic journey. Oh no, it was going to show something much more memorable. Waiting for Emily's graduation felt like watching a pot boil. But instead of water, it was pure, undiluted karma bubbling under the lid. But until that moment came, I had to do something far worse than planning revenge. I had to live with her. See, divorces don't happen overnight. There's paperwork, bureaucracy. The whole legal system wants you to really think it through before making things official. Like I was suddenly going to wake up one day and say, you know what? Maybe I do want to stay married to the woman who turned our house into a side business. We both knew it was over. I had made that perfectly clear. But Emily? She wasn't quite ready to let go. The first few days after our talk, she tried everything. The apologies, the long, dramatic sighs, the accidental brushes against my arm when she walked past. I ignored her. Then came the classic cooking for forgiveness strategy. Suddenly, she was making my favorite meals, setting my plate down with a hopeful little smile, as if a good steak would make me forget 7 betrayals and a business plan. I ate every bite, silently, staring at her like I was at a poker table, waiting to see what her next bluff would be. But the real kicker? The crying. Not the genuine kind, the kind people do when they realize they've lost something they actually love. No, this was the performative kind. The kind where she'd stand in the kitchen just long enough for me to notice, sniffling dramatically as she scrolled through her phone, waiting for me to say, "What's wrong?" I never asked. She'd clear her throat, sigh deeply, and say something like, I never thought we'd end up like this. Oh, we didn't end up like this, Emily. You did this. You made the choice. I didn't respond, just sipped my coffee and walked away. But here's the thing about guilt, it doesn't go away just because you ignore it. And Emily? She hated that I wasn't giving her anything to work with.
No fights.
No yelling. No angry speeches about how she broke my heart. I was giving her nothing, and that drove her insane. One night, she finally snapped. I was sitting in the living room, minding my business, when she stormed in, arms crossed. Jake, we have to talk. I didn't even look up from my phone. No, we don't. She let out a frustrated laugh. You can't just ignore me forever. Not forever, I said. Just until you find a new place. And that shut her up real quick. because that was the other thing, we were still stuck together. She was looking for a new apartment, but in the meantime, she was still here, living in my house, sleeping in our bed, which, for the record, I had now claimed entirely for myself. I spread out like a starfish just because I could. She wanted to talk, to make me say something that would make her feel better. I refused, because the truth was, there was nothing to say. And soon, she wasn't going to want to talk to me ever again. Graduation day arrived, and I woke up feeling fantastic. Emily? Not so much. She had been quiet all morning. Not the fake, dramatic silence she'd been using for sympathy, but the real kind. The kind that settles in when you know things aren't going your way. Maybe she was finally realizing that I wasn't coming back, that there was no fixing this. Or maybe she was just stressed about her big moment. The solo performance she had been talking about for months. The one I had made a few adjustments to. She had no idea. She walked around the house, humming, warming up her voice, eyes practically sparkling with excitement. She was glowing, like this was going to be the moment that turned everything around for her. I almost felt bad. Almost. We drove to the venue separately. I took my time, strolled in casually, found a seat toward the back. Close enough to see everything, far enough that no one would suspect I had anything to do with what was about to happen. The auditorium was packed. Students, parents, professors, hundreds of people, all gathered to celebrate their bright futures, including Emily's parents. I spotted them a few rows ahead, smiling proudly, ready to see their daughter shine. Oh, she was about to shine, all right. The ceremony dragged on. Speeches, awards, the usual follow your dreams nonsense. Then, finally, it was Emily's turn. She walked onto the stage, microphone in hand, chin lifted high like she was about to deliver the performance of a lifetime. And in a way she was. The lights dimmed. The projector behind her flickered to life. And instead of a slideshow of her academic achievements, the real show began. One by one the images appeared. Her, Ryan, the pictures she had sold. Some tame, some less tame, all of them undeniable. For 3 glorious seconds, there was complete silence. Then, gasps, whispers, a few nervous chuckles from people who probably thought it was some kind of joke. Emily had no idea. She started singing, completely unaware that behind her, the entire audience was no longer watching her. They were watching her career implode in real time. Then someone shouted, "What the?" Emily blinked, paused, confused by the reaction. Then slowly, so slowly, she turned. And I will never forget the way her entire body went rigid when she saw what was on that screen. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly, like her brain had hit the emergency brakes but hadn't quite figured out how to process what was happening. And then, she screamed. Not a word, not a sentence, just a full-bodied, horror movie-level scream before she bolted off stage. Chaos erupted. Faculty members rushed to shut the projector off. Parents were covering their kids' eyes. Professors were whispering furiously to each other, trying to figure out if they had just witnessed the most bizarre technical error in university history or an actual scandal. Emily's parents? They just sat there, frozen. Her mother had her hands over her mouth, eyes wide in absolute shock. Her father? His face was red. The kind of red that said, "We are never speaking of this again." I sat back in my chair, watching the beautiful disaster unfold, and let out a long, satisfied sigh. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Emily wanted to be a star? Well, congratulations. Now she had an audience she'd never forget. I left before the dust settled. Not because I was afraid of getting caught. Please, the university's IT guy was probably halfway to a meltdown trying to explain how a mysterious technical error just happened to expose one of their star graduates in the most spectacularly humiliating way possible. No, I left because my work here was done. Emily had wanted attention. She had wanted admiration. She had wanted to be celebrated. She got exactly that. Just not the way she expected. The fallout. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up with messages. Mutual friends trying to check in while not so subtly asking, "Dude, was that you?" Emily's mom, calling twice, then texting, "Jake, please call me." We need to talk. Emily? Silence. But I already knew where she was. Sure enough, about an hour later, I heard the front door slam. Then footsteps. Fast. Heavy. And then, you. She didn't finish the sentence. Just stood there, shaking, hands balled into fists, her face a blotchy mess from crying. I didn't stand up, didn't react. Just sipped my drink and looked at her like she was a door-to-door salesman who had knocked one too many times. She pointed at me, voice trembling. You ruined my life. I tilted my head. Did I? You. She let out a strangled laugh, running her hands through her hair like she was about to lose her mind. You hacked my graduation. You. I didn't take those pictures, Emily. I leaned back, raising an eyebrow. I didn't post them. I didn't start a side business using our house. I didn't lie for months. But sure, blame me for people knowing the truth. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then came the waterworks. I didn't mean for it to get out of control, she sobbed. I was lonely. I rolled my eyes. Emily, if you say, I was lonely one more time, I swear. I was, she shouted, voice cracking. And you were never around. You were always working. And I needed something for me. And then Ryan, he listened. And, yeah, I said flatly. Bet he listened real well. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to shift gears. Jake, No, I said. We're done. You don't get to cry and beg and make this my fault. You don't get to rewrite the story just because you don't like how it ended. Her jaw clenched. You're cruel. I snorted. And you're still here. That shut her up. Because she was still here. Still living in my house. Still dragging her feet on moving out because, deep down, she thought I'd forgive her. Not a chance. She wiped her eyes aggressively, sniffing. I'll be out by next week. I just shrugged. Good. Then I picked up my drink, stood up, and just for good measure, walked right past her. Like she really wasn't there. Because in my mind, she wasn't. A week later, she was gone. Not just out of the house. Out of my life. She left a note on the counter. Something long and rambling about how she never meant to hurt me, and how she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her one day. I tossed it in the trash without reading past the first sentence. Because forgiveness? Not happening. Not now. Not ever. Some people say revenge is overrated. That it's better to take the high road and let karma do the work. Maybe. But watching Emily's perfect little world burn? Watching her get a taste of what it felt like to be blindsided, humiliated, and made a joke of? That wasn't just satisfying. It was justice. And now I get to move on. With a clean slate. And a damn good story to tell.